we did a lot. We covered a lot of ground in one lesson last week, and I understood there are also some questions. So let's try to wrap it up. So let's start with basic things. What are you not allowed to eat on Pesach?
Chamesh.
Chametz, excellent. Tikva. Who can tell me what is chametz? Who can define chametz for me?
Bread, and everything has what do you call it in English? Yes, like bread.
Made from grains, very good. But there is something that we make from grains that we not only we do eat, we have to eat on Pesach. What's made from grains that we do eat on Pesach?
Matzah.
Very good. What's the difference between matzah and chametz?
That the dough hasn't risen more than 18 seconds. So in matzah,
18 minutes. 18 minutes. Don't exaggerate. 18 minutes. Okay. Very good. Okay, so that's chametz. You're not allowed to eat dough that has, once it's been in contact with flour, with water and flour being in contact, then the clock goes ticking. If you've ever been in a matzah bakery, there's always a clock there, and they have to make sure that the matzot are baking in the oven, have baked in the oven before 18 minutes have gone from the time the water and the flour first touched each other. Because after 18 minutes, the rising process starts, then it's chametz. Excellent. Okay. And then we talk about the prohibitions of chametz. So obviously, you're not allowed to eat it during Pesach. Do you remember there's something else? Not just that you're not allowed to eat it. There's more to it than that.
You're not allowed to own it.
Even. Own it. Excellent. You can't own from it. You can't benefit from it in any way. Excellent. Good. And then we talked a bit about the cleaning. We talked about the fact that we need to get rid of the chametz in our homes. We should clean well our homes. The areas where we're not planning on eating, there it's enough that you make sure there is no kezait, the size of an olive. Usually they say it's about the matchbox, the old olives of the Tanakh, but it's not proper half a biscuit or something like that. In the areas where there is food, where you're going to eat, you have to be even more careful. There shouldn't even be crumbs of chametz anywhere, because that could fall into your food. And as we explained, there is no bitul, there is no nullification in chametz, as we have in other prohibitions. And therefore, even a little crumb of bread, which happened to be on top of your cupboard, that would fall into your food, that would make the food chametz on Pesach. And therefore, you have to be very careful to clean all the areas, use detergent, soap, and so on. Then we talked a bit about kashering vessels. The main rule to remember is kebol'o kach polto. The way it sucks in, that's the way it comes out, right? So some that's cook. If you use liquid cooking with boiling with water, that the way to get it out is by cooking it, by dropping it into boiling water on the fire, which is hagala. Yeah, that's one way of kashering is hagala. Something which is usually used hot, dry, grilling things or oven trays or things like that. The only way to kasher it is to burn it so that the metal gets red hot, that sparks start coming out of it, which, as we said, is for most of our stuff nowadays extremely impractical. So it might make more sense to get new ones. We spoke about the fact that everything made on earthenware, china, cannot be kashered, cannot be made kasher for Pesach. It'll have to be put away for Pesach, and you need to get separate stuff for Pesach. We said glass is a machloket. Ashkenazim are more strict and do not use the same glass on Pesach as they do during the year. Sfaradim are more lenient and allow glass as long as it's clean. As a general rule, everything that's been used cold, you just need to clean it. You have to be careful with certain types of vessels where there could be cracks, and the chametz could stay in the cracks, or they are very ornamental, and then you cannot really clean them properly. Yeah? For example, a kiddush cup. People often ask me in previous years, what about a kiddush cup? Yeah. So technically, there's no problem in a kiddush cup because you only put wine or grape juice in it. And even if a little crumb of bread falls in it, so you just clean it. It's not hot. The problem that you have is a lot of these kiddush cups are very ornamental, like what I have at home, and they're little tiny cracks. So if a crumb of bread went there, it's impossible to get it out. Maybe with a toothbrush, I don't know. It's very tricky. So it's honestly just safer to put it away and not use it. Use a smooth wine glass or something instead on Pesach. But depends, of course, what sort of cup you have. Okay. And how often is it near the bread? Usually it's near the bread because it's, okay, but I trust most of your communities will give out some sort of Pesach info or information, some sort of, at least we do it in Finland. We send info with all the information, each thing, how to kasher it. The surfaces should be kashered, so everywhere where hot food is brought, the table, the counters, they should either be covered during Pesach or they should be completely clean and have boiling water poured on them. We mentioned the sinks should be kashered as well in the same manner, completely clean, and then have pour boiling water straight from the kettle on them. The kettle, you should clean it and then let it over boil. An electric kettle, I mean. The oven, we mentioned clean it with the proper cleaner and then turn it to maximum for an hour. We spoke about the dishwasher. Again, if you can manage without the dishwasher, better. But if it's a necessity, then clean properly the filter. Make sure there's no residue of food anymore, and then let it run in a cycle. Put the detergent in it, run in a cycle empty, and that should be all right. We mentioned that plastic is a machloket. Some allow kashering plastic, others don't allow kashering plastic. So better to avoid, if possible. Microwaves. Microwaves, again, you could clean it properly and then put a glass with soapy water in it and let it heat and turn it on until there's only a little bit of water. Be careful with it because if the glass gets empty, then your microwave might break. We just put away our microwave. We actually just don't use the dishwasher. So again, whatever, the less, kashering is always tricky and sometimes can go wrong. So whenever it's possible to do without it, or you have a bit more affluent, you have a special kitchen. Some people have a Pesach kitchen, you have a Pesach oven, Pesach stove, so then you avoid all your problems. But most of us don't have that, so that's why we have the option of making things kasher. Now, are there any questions on last week's material? Because we have a lot to cover this week. Paola, please.
Yes. What about the plata? How can we kasher the plata?
Yeah, Platat Shabbat. So clean it well. And I would say probably best to just cover it, keep it covered with foil, the whole Pesach. Maybe put 2 levels of foil. You could kasher it with boiling water. If you clean it well and you pour boiling water in it, that would make it kasher as well. I'm just a little bit worried because I don't know if it could damage the machine or the hot water go inside. It might be a bit hard to clean also, plata. So I would think that what we have done is just to cover it. I think that will probably be your best bet. Somebody asked about living in a non-Jew's home. I assume they are staying by a non-Jew or something like that on Pesach. Well, the truth is, the answer is very simple. If you live with a non-Jew, the non-Jew does not live. Let's have a non-Jewish roommate, a student or something like that. The non-Jew does not need to keep Pesach, and everything that he owns. So that's not your problem, even if he's keeping it there. So that's not really a problem. Obviously, you should put some sort of separation, not eat next to him, because you might end up eating chametz. Or take precautions. All your stuff is always completely separate from his stuff. Chametz is always more serious than non-kosher food because non-kosher food, you're not going to eat his food. But sometimes chametz, bread, crumbs, they go everywhere. So be careful. Let me just get a drink for myself so it's easier to talk. Okay. Any more questions?
Yes, please. I have a question. You mentioned last Shiur about you have a relatives who fly to a hotel. Is that the problem? To go to have a vacation on the hotel, or must it be special hotel? Thank you.
Okay. So look, there's nothing wrong in staying in a hotel on Pesach. Yeah, the hotel might have chametz, but you're not the owner of the hotel, so the chametz doesn't belong to you. So that's not a problem. So yeah, you could definitely stay in a hotel on Pesach. What I was referring to is there are a lot of people who it's hard for them to make Pesach, it's hard for them to clean. Elderly people, they don't have family always to go to for Pesach or something like that. So there's a lot of programs in the world of making Pesach. They make a nice kosher, everything, glad kosher Pesach somewhere. For example, my in-laws, they're going this year, they're going to some, they live in England, they're going to some hotel which is kasher completely for Pesach, and all the people in the hotel make the seder together and things like that. So these type of things are quite common in the world. Many rabbis speak a bit against it because they say, what is this? Pesach is meant to be the time you're with your family and you sit around the table and you tell the story of Pesach. It's not the time to have a big go somewhere where some massive social and so on. But at the same time, I think for some people it's an amazing thing. For some people it's an amazing thing. Some people don't have family. Some people are not in a position where it's easy for them to clean their house and so on. Okay, so you asked the question here, if you're not home on Pesach, do you need to clean the house before they leave? So what you usually do is you sell the chametz to the goy, right? So if you are not planning on being in the house at all, you don't need to clean or cash or anything, right? You just sign that you're not aware, that you just put that you sell all your chametz to the goy, and then there's no problem. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Anything more? Okay. Let's move on because we have a lot to cover. So once you get to, you have your kosher Pesach home, you want to bring in kosher Pesach food, right? You're not going to want to starve on Pesach. So now, what is kasher Pesach and what is not? And here I don't want to say too much myself, because at the end of the day, the reference has to be the rabbi of your community. And I don't know exactly if in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, the standards are exactly the same. There might be different opinions on different things. So I just going to be very, very general. And then you ask the rabbi of your community. I mean, maybe you have a kosher list for Pesach in your countries. I don't know. But that's the rabbi's job in the community to make sure that there is what the community needs for Pesach. But the basic idea to understand is, first of all, anything, even if it's 100% kosher Pesach product, if it's in your home and it's open, the bag is open, that has to go away for Pesach, because there is no way you can guarantee no chametz is dropped in it. During the year, you have chametz everywhere. So if it's an open packet that's been in your cupboard with all the other packets, for sure you cannot use that packet on Pesach. That has to go away with all the stuff that you sell to the goy in the cupboard that gets sold. Okay? That's clear. Now, buying products. Okay, so obviously, fruit is just fruit. There's nothing. Vegetables are just vegetables. So you buy them raw, there's no problem at all. A raw fish is a raw fish. There's nothing wrong with buying a raw fish on Pesach. Okay. Now the problems comes once you have products. Any sort of product nowadays is made has a few ingredients in it, and this is where it gets tricky. It's tricky the whole year. I'm sure, and I don't know if you have already had the shiurim on kashrut, but there's a lot to talk about kashrut the whole year round. But the whole year round, it's easier in many ways. First of all, you have, as we explained, nullification, bitul. Yeah, that means even if something non-kosher ended up in a product for whatever reason, you usually got the nullification, 60 times more kosher than non-kosher. So you always got a safety net that you're not going to eat non-kosher. Because if you check, if it's an okay product and each community have their kosher list, and something goes wrong in the factory or whatever, and something non-kosher fell on it, or at the end of the day, you've got the nullification of 60. So you've got a safety net the rest of the year. Pesach, you don't have the safety net, right? So even if you read all the ingredients and it says cannot find anything grain-based there, but who knows? You know, it's a factory. It's you know, what could happen there? So you're a lot more careful with chametz. It says chametz asur b'mashem. The smallest bit of chametz is forbidden. So that makes things trickier. Also, in the rest of the year, the main things we're worried about are animal-based products, right? There's also, of course, the worry the whole year round about wine-based products because of wine, but most of our issues are around animal-based products. And I don't know the situation in all the countries, but there's more, at least definitely in Finland, I assume also in the other countries, there's more and more movement towards becoming more vegan, vegetarian, putting a lot of products that are available for the vegan, vegetarian people. And therefore, they're starting to use less and less and less animal-based products. Okay, of course, you still have to be careful, but it's this sort of stuff is changing a lot. Whereas with chametz, there's chametz everywhere. There's grain everywhere. And like I explained, just because it's gluten-free doesn't mean there's no grain-based anywhere. You could have grain that's safe for gluten-free people. You could have oats, you could have the gluten removed. So it's very risky to buy products in a shop on Pesach. So if you are in America, you're in Israel, in England, in France, in a large Jewish community, then usually the rabbi will just go and buy products that have a stamp kasher lePesach, because you'll have all the products there that you want with a special supervision with the mashgiach who goes to the factory and who actually follows the production, and they make a special kasher lePesach production of pretty much all the products that you want. So that's a situation what happened in larger Jewish communities. Now here in Scandinavia, communities are smaller, and we don't have these types of capabilities. So what do we rely on? And I believe that's what all your kosher lists will be based on. So what we rely on is something very interesting, that the halakha tells us that this law that I told you, chametz asur b'mashu, chametz is forbidden even in the smallest amount. That law is a law for what happens during Pesach. If a crumb of bread falls into your soup on Pesach, you have to throw away the whole soup. But if that crumb of bread fell into your soup before Pesach, and then on Pesach you want to eat the soup, it's kasher. Why? Because chametz before Pesach, it's just like all the other things. It becomes nullified in 60, right? Because Pesach hasn't started. That's what's very interesting. The prohibition of chametz is very interesting because we're talking about something that's permitted the whole year round. And at this specific moment of the year, it becomes forbidden for a week or a bit more, right? So before that, it's not a prohibited item. And therefore, the normal rules that we have everywhere in kashrut apply to it. And therefore, if something chametz-based fell into food, and there's 60 times more non-chametz than chametz, which will usually be the case, then the food will remain kasher. And therefore, if it happened before Pesach, therefore, there's a very important thing you have to know. When you have products which don't have a kosher stamp for Pesach, okay? There's no mashgiach that has followed the production, but we still put it on the kosher lePesach list. Salt, milk, pure butter. I don't know exactly what the rabbi in each community allows, but whatever they are, these things, this type of products. So we always say buy it before Pesach, or buy something which you know it was made before Pesach, because then you always have a safety, right? You have a safety net that if something chametz fell there, well, it will become batel, nullified before Pesach start. Yeah, very important to understand this. If you go on Chol HaMoed Pesach, in the intermediate days of Pesach, when you're allowed to go shopping, and you buy a bottle of milk, let's say, there could be issues with it. They add D vitamin to milk. Sometimes the D vitamin might come from a source or have a connection to chametz or whatever. There might be issues. Again, most likely not, but there might be. It depends on the system. So therefore, you're very risky because all you need is a little crumb, and your milk is chametz. But if you bought it before Pesach, so if something was there, it became batel. You're safe. So what we do, for example, before Pesach, so we buy lots of the bottles of milk that we need, and we freeze because milk doesn't last so long. Or you could buy milk that's long life or whatever. So that's one way. But yeah, products which don't have a kasher lepesach certification, that don't have a kasher lepesach stamp, but they are on the list of as kasher, so you should buy them all before Pesach. Okay, so these are important rules to know. Everything that's been open be during the year should go away, even if it's 100% kasher lepesach. If it's open, it has to go away. If it's got a kasher lepesach stamp, you buy a new product, no problem. To buy it whenever you want, before Pesach or during Chol HaMoed. And if it's a product that doesn't have a kasher lepesach stamp and certification, just something that's on your kasher lepesach list, that we can assume it's kasher lepesach, buy it before Pesach. Okay, that is that's that. Yeah, that's the main thing to be. These are the main things to be aware of as it comes to buying products and having kasher lepesach products. And of course, nowadays Baruch Hashem are kosher for you. You can order a lot of things from abroad, but a lot of things are also okay. Like we said, and definitely things like fruit and fish and just which are not even products, they're ready items. There you don't have any problem at all because you see what it is and you can wash off if you see something wrong and you're fine. Yeah. So that's not clean. That's not a problem at all. And yeah. So that's what you should be aware of. Now, that's the preparation. That's the shopping. That's what you need to do. Then you have the actions or the mitzvah that you have to do. And now there's going to be a big difference between this year and the other years. Yeah, you should remember in the Leila Seder, in the night of the Seder, we say, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol haleilot. What's the difference between this year and this night and all the other nights? But this year we can actually ask a question, Ma nishtana hashana hazot mikol hashanim. How is this year different from all other years? Did you know what am I referring to? What's special about the way Pesach is this year compared to other years?
Start on Shabbos, Motzei Shabbat.
Motzei Shabbat, excellent. Erev Pesach shechal liot b'Shabbat. We have a Erev Pesach which falls on Shabbat. The day before Pesach, Erev Pesach falls on Shabbat. And we're going to see that changes a lot of things. But this shiur is really for you to know what to do every year. So I'm going to want to go through what happens in a normal year. And then I'm going to speak about how things are different this year. Somebody was showing to me that actually the next time we're going to have Erev Pesach on Shabbat is in 2045, in 20 years. So it's not going to be practical very soon again. It's practical this year. And then there's going to be a long break when we have it again. But it's important to know what to do when that happens. So what happens in a normal year? In a normal year, by the way, there are not that many options because of a rule, lo badu Pesach. So the night of Seder is never, the first night of Seder is never Sunday night, it's never Tuesday night, and it's never Thursday night. So the options really are like we have Saturday night, Friday night, Monday night, or Wednesday night, right? Those are the options when it can fall. Why is that? We can talk about another time. Perhaps somebody wants to give a shiur once on the whole calendar and how it works, but that's the way it is. So on a normal year, so let's say for argument's sake, Pesach was on a Monday night. I think last year it was Monday night. So what happens? 24 hours before the Seder, the night before the Seder, so let's say the Seder was Monday night, so the night before is Sunday night, you do what's called Bedikat Chametz, the search for the Chametz, okay? At night, after nightfall, you have a mitzvah that the Chachamim, our sages commanded, to check your home and check all the places in the home where Chametz is brought during the year, and check that there is no Chametz there. Okay, that's the night before the Seder. Okay, you'll find it in every Haggadah, usually on the first page or one of the first pages of the Haggadah. You light a candle, you make the bracha, Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam, Asher Kitshanu Mitzvotav V'Tzivanu Al Biur Chametz. Blessed are you, Hashem, our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to destroy the chametz. Yeah, maybe it's better, honestly, that I share with you the text on Sefaria. Maybe that way we can actually study this a bit better. But this is annoying a bit. Wait a second. Let me open Sefaria for you if it works. I don't know what's the situation of Haggadot. We have Haggadah in Finnish. I know there's Haggadah in Swedish. Is there Haggadah in Danish and Norwegian as well? So let's find liturgy. Do they have Haggadah in Pesach? We must have. Pesach Haggadah Ashkenaz. It doesn't start from Bedikat Chametz here. Okay. No Bedikat Chametz. Interesting. Okay, so it doesn't matter then. Do they have it in the Sidur maybe? Some Sidurim have it. Interesting. They haven't put Bedikat Chametz here at all. Okay, so I'll leave it to you. But it doesn't matter. In most Haggadot, you always find the first page. You light a candle. Some people take a feather as well and a little plate. They make a bracha, Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam, Asher Kitshanu Mitzvotav V'Tzivanu Al Biur Chametz. So it's commanded us to destroy the chametz. Be very careful. We call it the bdika, the checking. But actually, why are we checking? Because we want to destroy it, right? It says in the Torah, you have to destroy the chametz. The way to destroy it, first you have to check where the chametz is, right? You make the bracha, and then you start searching all around the house for chametz, and you collect all the chametz into that little plate that you have. Now, there is a custom, not a law, not a halacha, but there's a very common custom that before the bdika, during the day before, somebody in the family takes 10 little pieces of bread or pasta or any other chametz and hides them in different parts of the house. Okay? It's based on the Kabbalah, 10 Sefirot. Why 10? The main reason, a simple level, is very simple. There is a halacha, you're not allowed to make a bracha levatala. You're not allowed to make a blessing for nothing. And usually your house is already completely clean because you've been cleaning it for weeks and you get it already, and your house is kasher lePesach. And usually by the time you get to the night before the Seder night, there's no chametz anywhere because you're already cooking. Suddenly, most people are already starting to cook for the Seder. So there's the worry that you're going to do this whole checking of the house. You're not going to find any chametz because you already cleaned everything perfectly. So it came the custom to hide a few pieces of chametz. So this way, the blessing is not for nothing. Yeah, that's a custom. But it's just a custom. It's not really halacha, because the truth is, your blessing is not for nothing. You're making the blessing to check, to destroy the chametz that you might find. And if you don't find, even better. But the blessing is a good blessing, because the mitzvah, you're doing the mitzvah of looking for it. And sometimes you find, sometimes you don't find. So I'm not putting down the custom. I do it in my family, and I think most families do it, to hide the 10 pieces. But be careful with the custom. Be careful, because it can sometimes cause more bad than good. Because if you don't find one of the pieces, then you're in trouble, because then you have chametz in your house on Pesach, right? So it's always good to write down, even though it's a nice game for the children to look for the chametz. Whoever hides the chametz should maybe write down where did they hide the chametz, because you don't want a situation where the person who hid them doesn't even remember where he or she hid them, and then you end up with chametz in your house on Pesach. That's one thing. Another thing, if you're using bread, wrap it very well. Wrap the chametz, because otherwise it's gonna crumb all around your house. Maybe dry pasta might be better than bread, or something like that. Maybe a piece of pita bread or wrap or something like that, because normal bread has crumbs everywhere. It's not a good idea, but wrap it around. Take small pieces, not a kezai, not less than half a cookie, like a quarter of a biscuit, something. Because then, even if you lose it, then you don't have a problem. Because owning, as long as it doesn't end up in your food, owning a very small amount, like a crumb, is not really a problem in halacha. It's not considered ownership. Yes, so take your precautions when you do this, b'dikat chametz. Then you check the whole house for the chametz. And again, the mitzvah is not to collect the 10 pieces. The mitzvah is to check every place where you bring chametz during the year. That's a mitzvah. It's a nice addition to make a bit of a game, and they look for the 10 pieces, but that's not the main mitzvah. You try to check every place where you put chametz during the year. And if you have a large apartment and there's a lot of places where you put chametz, you should start checking before the night. Yeah. When you've cleaned your house, you should check all the places where chametz is brought during the year, and then you should leave some area that you don't check, and you leave that area for the last night when you do the b'dikat chametz with the blessing and with the candle. The reason why we use a candle, by the way, and why do you do it at night, is because the candle will go to all the idea is that during the day and the sun, there might be shadows. With the candle, you can go to little corners. That's the idea of the candle. When you've collected all the chametz that you found, then you make the declaration. Now, this is very important that you understand. We make very similar declaration in the night and then again in the morning, called the kol chamira. Kol chamira, all the chametz. Yeah, I'm trying to. Here, I have a Haggadah. Let's go. Art scroll Haggadah. Excellent. So you say an Aramaic text is written in all the Haggadah, and it's very important to understand this is not a prayer. Yeah, and that's why it's in Aramaic, because Aramaic was a spoken language of people. Yeah, so that's what the custom is, why it's written in Aramaic. But really, if you don't understand Aramaic, don't say it in Aramaic. Say it in English or Finnish or Swedish or Norwegian or whatever language you know, right? Because you are making a declaration, which goes in English like this: any chametz or leaven that is in my possession, which I have not seen, have not removed, and do not know about, should be annulled and become ownerless like dust of the earth. You are making a declaration that if there is any chametz anywhere that I have not yet seen, it should be hefker. It should be not belong to me anymore. I relinquish ownership on it. Okay? So this is a very important legal declaration. It's not a prayer. And you should say it in a language that you understand. Okay? So that's the evening. First the blessing, al biur chametz, then the checking, collecting, and then put it all in a safe place for the next morning, say this declaration, go to sleep. because there's a lot of work the next morning. Then you wake up the next morning. The next day is known as the fast of the firstborn. Ta'anit Bechorim. The day before Pesach is the fast of the firstborn. What is this all about? It's an interesting thing. It's not mentioned in the Tanakh or in the Talmud. It's a later custom. I believe the Rishonim, the medieval commentators, bring it down. There is a custom that the firstborn fast. Why? Because Hashem saved the Jewish firstborn and only killed the Egyptian firstborn. So it's a time of repentance to think that, in a way, I also deserve death, and I also done sins, and this is a time for me to repent and be a better person, to be deserving of God's mercy, and so on. And that was sort of the idea of the fast of the firstborn. So some had a custom only the firstborn men fasted, also the firstborn women fasted. Different customs. Pauline, I'll explain, and then I'll take your question, okay? If you don't mind, because I want to make this clear. That was the original custom. Now, the problem with this custom is it was very difficult in practice to follow it. Because imagine, you've got Erev Pesach, no eating, no drinking, the whole day, and you're preparing, and you're cooking, and you're preparing everything. Then you come to the night, finally. It gets dark late here in Scandinavia, so 9 o'clock, 9:30. And then you make Kiddush, and you have a big cup of wine. And then, Magid, you talk, and you talk, and you talk, because you're doing the mitzvah of the Seder night, and you haven't eaten or drunk anything, and you've just had a big cup of wine, and you talk, and you discuss, and meant to be explaining to your child what is the Haggadah. And then you drink another cup of wine, the second cup of wine, and then you get a piece of matzah. So it's not very practical. You're not going to get much out of your seder if you've been fasting the whole day. So therefore, the custom that's internationally accepted by Jews all around already is that we find a way to get out. Yeah. So because it's a custom, if there's any seudat mitzvah, any meal that's related to a mitzvah, then anybody who comes to the meal of the mitzvah is exempt from this fast. So if there is a brit milah on that day, or a bar mitzvah, or a wedding, or something, or one of the 7 days of wedding, then that's okay. That's automatic. You come there, you've eaten, you can break the fast, and you don't need to fast. Now, normally there isn't any occasion by itself, mostly, So therefore, what you do is we make a ceremony. What do we do? Usually it's the rabbi of the community, he makes a siyum. What do I mean a siyum? He plans his studies so that he finishes one tractate of the Talmud on that day, on the fast of the firstborn. And then he invites everybody for the meal, so to say, because you're meant to make a meal. You're meant to make a meal when you do the fast. When you finish the tractate of the Talmud, and that meal is a mitzvah. So that overrides the fast of the firstborn. So practically what happens in all the synagogues is, on the fast of the firstborn, on Tanit Bechor, the day before Pesach, in the morning, the rabbi reads the last lines of the tractate of the Talmud, and they make Kaddish, and they give out some food to all the firstborn, because they're invited to the meal, and then they're free from the fast. That's what happens all around. So it's an interesting thing. There's something called the fast of the firstborn, but actually very, very few Jews actually fast on the fast of the firstborn. Even though it's within the calendar, we work around the fast by making siyum. Okay, Pauline Holm, you have a question.
Yes, it's because there's also in Yom Kippur, there's this discussion when you have the prayer for your parents or like for people who died, right? And then if you are a convert, you don't do it or something. So in the fast of the firstborn, if you are a convert, does it apply to you if you're a firstborn or not? Is there an exception?
Question. Yeah, interesting question. So like I said, few people fast on the fast of the firstborn. I think there is a machloket, there are different opinions on your question. If a convert, because usually a convert doesn't have the holiness of it doesn't very holy. I don't mean that. It doesn't have the laws of a firstborn. because, you know, if you want to, when you were born, you were not Jewish, and then when you become Jewish, you're like a new person. So what you were before doesn't matter. But I think there are different views on this. So definitely, if you are a firstborn, even if you're a convert, it's worthwhile either coming to the synagogue that morning or getting some food, ask somebody to bring some food from it. Again, if it's a woman, there's a big, most women don't, women don't need to fast the firstborn anyway. But let's say a male firstborn convert, I think it's right for him to make an effort to be at the synagogue that morning and hear the siyum so that he can get break the fast. If he couldn't, I think there's probably also a very strong argument here to say that he doesn't need to fast anyways, because when he was born, even though he was the firstborn, he wasn't really Jewish. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Good. So that's the first part of the morning. Shacharit, siyum to break the fast, the firstborn. Then, if you look at your Jewish calendar, hopefully, it will tell you two very important times. The latest time to eat chametz and the latest time to destroy the chametz. Yeah, that's the Erev Pesach, the day before Pesach. That's the busiest day for any Jew, right? There's a lot going on that day. So, any chametz that you want to eat, you have a time. I don't know what it is you'll have to check it on your community what it is. There in Helsinki, I checked, it's 10:58 this year, for example. It depends, of course, on the year, and depends if it changes, but it's in the morning. Before that, you have to stop eating chametz. Now let's understand why. Because Pesach only starts in the night, right? The day before Pesach is not Pesach. So what's this whole thing? Why you have to stop eating chametz by a certain time in the morning? So there's a very interesting verse in the Torah, in a completely different part of the Torah, where it says, Lo tishchat al chametz dam zivchi. You shall not slaughter my sacrifice, the Pesach sacrifice, with the chametz. Now, what does this mean? Don't slaughter the sacrifice with the chametz? So it says like this. From this verse, our sages teach us that on the time we're sacrificing the Pesach lamb, which was sacrificed in the temple, at that time there should be no more chametz in your home, right? So in the times of the temple, and hopefully very soon Mashiach will come and we'll do it again. At midday, they would start the Korban Pesach. They would start the Pesach sacrifice. This was the biggest event of the whole year in the temple. You realize all the Jews came, millions and millions of people. Yeah, it says that they had a whole system, you know, the slaughtering hundreds of thousands of sheep. They say the Kohanim, the priests, were like walking in blood until their knees. You know, this was one of the huge events of the year, slaughtering massive amounts of sheep. Because every Jew would have to, they would grill the sheep, and everybody would get a piece of it at the end of in the evening. So the whole afternoon of Pesach was a time of slaughtering the Korban Pesach. Yeah, the Jewish people were divided in 3 shifts, and they would enter the yard or the temple, and they would play music, and it was a huge thing. So that's the Korban. That means that from in the afternoon of the day before Pesach is already the time of the sacrifice of Pesach. And already at that time, there should be no chametz in your house. Okay? So even though today we don't have the Pesach sacrifice, the halakha remains the same. On the afternoon of Erev Pesach, you are not allowed to have chametz in your house. And actually, that time is already a bit of a semi-chag. Yeah? Because the time of the korban, right? You should leave work at midday or middays later, 1:30, whatever. You should come in the afternoon. Depends a bit what you're doing. You shouldn't be busy with other work except preparations for Pesach. Yeah, the afternoon of the day before Pesach, Erev Pesach, is already somewhat of a special time. So therefore, midday there should be no more chametz. And our rabbis were worried if you wait till midday, you're gonna miss it. So already what they did like that is like this. Already 2 hours It's complicated. I'm not going to go into all the laws of the zmanim, of the times. But about 2 hours before that, we stop eating chametz, and 1 hour before that, we stop owning chametz and having chametz. So you can have breakfast on the day on Erev Pesach with chametz. Then before you have to stop it by a certain time, wherever it is, 10:30, 11 o'clock, depends. Then we make after that time we cannot eat chametz. Then we make a fire, and we burn all the chametz that's left. Yeah, I don't know what you do there. In our community, we do it in the yard of the community. Everybody brings their chametz, and we make a fire. And what was I going to tell you? We make a fire. We burn the chametz. Of course, that chametz which you're planning on selling to the goy, that you don't need to burn, but tape all those cupboards are going to the goy. Mark very clearly chametz. You're not touching. Already that morning, the rabbi of the community or whoever is in charge of selling the chametz goes to meet with the non-Jew, and they draw the contract, and the goy buys the chametz from the rabbi who's representing all the Jews of the community. And we burn the 10 pieces that we collected the night before. If you have some other chametz that we're not selling to the goy, we burn. You make a fire. And after the chametz is completely burnt, we make now again a declaration in Aramaic or in Finnish or in Swedish or in Norwegian or in English or in Danish. And this is very important. When you say this declaration in the morning, you are actually fulfilling a mitzvah from the Torah. The Torah says on that day, on Erev Pesach, it says on the Tashbitu seor mibateichem, you shall remove chametz from your houses. And because you can never be sure that you really get rid of everything in something somewhere, by making this declaration, you are declaring, even if there is some chametz somewhere, I hereby relinquish ownership and do not give it any value. So declaration is any chametz or leaven that is in my possession, whether I have recognized it or not, whether I have seen it or not, whether I have removed it or not, should be annulled and become ownerless like dust of the earth. That's it. And that burning and declaration you have to do before the second time, known as the time when you have to stop owning chametz. That's Erev Pesach, and that's that. And then you start preparing. You might need to go to work, you might not need to go to work. By the afternoon, definitely after midday, after Chatzot, which is around 1:30, you should come back home, you should start preparing for the Seder. Everything you need. And the Seder will be, actually next week's lesson will be about the Seder, so I'm not going to speak too much about that. But I do want to speak a bit about Chag. Yes, Paola, you want to ask?
Yeah, I was just wondering about this Chag because we have this celebrant to salt and burn the chametz at 12, but then we have how we do with the halot because we cannot even use the matzot.
Okay. So I explained to you what happens in a normal year. Now I'm going to explain to you what happens this year. Like I said, very exceptional year, right? Okay? It's going to be very different this year. But I wanted this because this recording is going to go for you forever, right? So I wanted you to know what happens 90% of 80% of the time. Now this year we have a very interesting year. I'm going to tell you why. Yeah. Okay? Good. Well, that's the general picture. Okay. Important thing to know about Pesach also. Here in the diaspora, the first 2 days of Pesach are Chag. The last 2 days of Pesach are Chag. Okay, these are the first day and the last day. In diaspora, first 2 days, last 2 days. Okay? Now, Chag is like Shabbat. Basically. There are some little differences. And have you learned about the laws of Shabbat here, everybody? Okay. So remember this, Chag is like Shabbat, because there's so many people are confused about it. There are certain little differences between Chag and Shabbat. You can carry certain things if there's a necessity for the Chag. Certain things related to cooking are different, are more lenient on Chag. But in basic format, Chag is like Shabbat. Yeah, that's important to realize. Then there's Chol HaMoed, which is the days between the two sides of the Chag. Yeah, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th day of Pesach. Those days are days when you're allowed to do the work according to necessity. Yeah, it's better if you can take the whole week off from work, but not everybody can do that. So Chol HaMoed, there are certain leniencies. You can work if you might have a loss if you don't work. You're allowed to do obviously everything you need for the Chag. So during those middle days, you can do the shopping that you need for the Chag, or if there's an opportunity to buy something now, you can't buy later. Chol HaMoed is its own sugya. Study it, Beniard, another time. I hope somebody teaches that at some point. Important to remember this. Yeah. So there is Chol HaMoed, which is, by the way, similar laws also on afternoon of Erev Pesach, which is time of the Korban, which is basically a weekday, but you should not do anything that's not necessary. You have Chagim, which are basically like Shabbat, except a few leniencies that make it a bit more lenient. And then you have Shabbat, which is the Shabbat and Yom Kippur, which are the strictest. Okay. Now I'm about to explain to you what we do this year with this very special thing that Shabbat is Erev Pesach. But first, I'm going to answer the question of Tikva, Shira. I'll try it. Please.
I have a question about the Matzah. If we have a package from the last year, so we have not we cannot eat, or we have to buy a new one.
Okay, good question. So if your matzot have been completely closed, and you can promise to me that no other food has dropped there during the year and be completely separate from everything else, then yeah, it's kasher lePesach, no problem. But if it's been opened during the year, then most likely some other food has fallen into it. Let me just get some more water and. Okay, now, Erev Pesach that falls on Shabbat. So let's try to understand the problems that we have. First, let's start with the fast of the first day. Yeah. So usually when we have a fast, there's two ways it can go, right? Either it goes forward or it goes back, if it falls on Shabbat. Yeah. So the day before Pesach is Shabbat, so obviously you cannot fast on Shabbat. It's forbidden to fast on Shabbat. So where does it go? So usually a fast can go forward or backward. Going forward wouldn't make any sense because Sunday is Chag. So obviously you cannot fast then either. Going backward, so we could fast on Friday, but we've moved it to Thursday because the general rule is we never fast on Friday unless that is the day it falls on the fast. But we don't move it Friday because Friday is an ideal day to fast. Friday is the day you're meant to prepare for Shabbat. Not really a day we can concentrate on repentance and tshuva and these things. So you should always do tshuva, but it's people are busy. So the fast of the firstborn is moved to Thursday. Thursday morning we make the siyum on the tractate of Talmud, and we give a bit of food to the firstborn so they don't have to fast. Thursday then, okay, that's the first problem solved. Then what about bdika and burning the chametz? Well, obviously, you cannot burn chametz on Shabbat morning, because Shabbat you're not allowed to burn. So that has to move. You cannot do bdika with a candle on Friday night. You're not allowed to touch a candle on Friday. You're not allowed to move a candle on Friday night. So all of that goes one day earlier. Thursday night, we do bdikat chametz. We check everything. We make the blessing. We make the declaration on Thursday night. Friday morning, we burn the chametz. We, just like any other year, put away all the other chametz, but we're not going to make the declaration that we usually make, because it's not Erev Pesach yet. And in fact, you're still going to need a bit of chametz, because on Friday night, you need to make hamotzi, and on Shabbat morning, you need to make hamotzi. And as one of you mentioned, who mentioned it, you cannot eat matzah on Erev Pesach. Very interesting halacha. Yeah? It's good that you mentioned it. The day before Pesach, it's forbidden to eat matzah until the night when you have the seder. Because the Chachamim wanted you to be excited about the mitzvah of eating matzah. And if you just had it during the day, you're not going to have the excitement for the taste of the mitzvah. So therefore, it's forbidden to eat matzah on the day before Pesach. Yeah. So, interesting halacha. Some people go further. Some people have a custom from Rosh Chodesh. Some people have a custom from Purim. They don't eat matzah to have the taste of matzah exciting in their mouth on the night of Pesach. But the day before is a halacha. So, there's no way you can eat matzah on Shabbat. So you have to make hamotzi on bread, right? So what do we do? So everything should be completely kosher lePesach on Friday, already kosher lePesach. Everything that's chametz we put away, except for breads. Usually the best is pita bread that doesn't crumb too much. Take 4 little breads, loaves of bread. On Friday night, make hamotzi on those 2 breads. Eat them. Keep them separate from everything else, because remember, your plates, your forks, your knives, it's all kasher lePesach. So it's good to put like a tissue or a plastic bag or something like that. Shabbat morning, I don't know what your communities are doing. What our community is doing is we make shachrit much earlier. So we finish on time. We're going to make it like 7:45 in the morning. So we finish on time. So everybody can come home before the latest time to eat chametz. Everybody can come home, make kiddush, hamotzi on the other 2 breads, 2 loaves of bread, and you eat that bread. Then you look everywhere, plastic bags, anywhere there might be crumbs. You collect any crumbs, pieces of chametz, it could be anywhere. Put those crumbs in the toilet, flush down the chain. And then on Shabbat morning, you make the declaration of kol chamira that I just mentioned. Any chametz or leaven, my possession, recognized or not, seen or not, it should be like the dust of the earth and ornaments. Then you make. Okay? So it's different from a normal year. First, you have the fast of the firstborn on Thursday. Thursday night, you check for the chametz. Friday morning, you burn the chametz, but you don't make any declaration. You save just those little breads that you need for the hamotzis. You make hamotzi Friday night. You make hamotzi Shabbat morning. And then you collect all the pieces, crumbs, everything, put them in the toilet, flush the chain, and make the declaration kol chamira. And then you've done the mitzvah, you've gotten rid of your chametz. There's one problem that's left, is the problem of seudah shlishit. On Shabbat, you're meant to have a 3rd meal. I assume you're aware of that, in the afternoon of Shabbat. Now here it gets really tricky, because you cannot eat bread. It's too late to eat bread. You've missed the time. It's over now. Afternoon of Shabbat, for sure you cannot eat chametz anymore. It's like we learned. You cannot eat matzah because it's not the night yet. But here it's not such a problem, because the Shulchan Aruch already tells us that seudah shlishit is not as strict as the other meals. even though ideally we make Seudah Shlishit on bread, if you're not hungry, you cannot take bread, you can do something else, mizonot, fruit, something like that. So therefore, because you cannot eat bread anymore, and you cannot eat matzah anymore, so if you have something which you can, mezonot might be harder to find. Sfaradim eat something called matzah shira, like a matzot which are baked in with not with water, with like juice or eggs. So you can make mezonot on that. Ashkenazim usually don't eat those, but you could have something made from matzah meal, let's say, like a cake made from matzah meal, or you could have a knedel, that could be mezonot. But if you cannot, it's complicated to have mezonot, you don't have to have mezonot. You just make have some fruit, some fish, some shev kolbo, as long as it's some sort of meal in the afternoon of Shabbat, that's also considered Seudah Shlishit when necessary. So these are the main things to be aware of that will be different this year. Obviously, you have to prepare candles on Friday that will burn enough. You're going to need to light from an existing candle on Motzai Shabbat, on Saturday night after Shabbat, and then again on Sunday night for the second night of the Seder. So you're going to need big, long candles. But otherwise, these are the main things to be aware of. Basically, you have to be all ready for Pesach Friday morning, but you make this little exception just for those few breads of Friday night and Shabbat morning. Okay, any questions? Paola, please.
Yes, usually for Eruv Tavshilim, Eruv Tavshilim, normally I use a piece of bread and an egg and a hard, but what for example you use for this when is Pesach?
Okay, so let's explain first, because I don't know if everybody here knows Eruv Tavshilin. Eruv Tavshilin is something that you need in years when the Chag falls on, when there's a Chag on Friday. So then you're not allowed to cook on Chag for the needs of the next day, only for the needs of the same day. So we start the cooking before the Chag so that you have food, so you can allow to continue cooking on Friday, which is Chag, for Shabbat. Yeah. This year we don't have that problem because Friday is not Chag. Yeah. And I think Shavuot we're also not having, and also in Tishrei I don't think we're gonna have it. So it's not gonna be very practical right now. But if it happens, it can happen. I think we had it a few years ago. Maybe it was even last year, 2 years ago. We have it sometimes that it's Thursday, Friday is Pesach, and then immediately after it's Shabbat. So then you would have to take one cooked item and one bread. And on Pesach, of course, instead of bread, it will be matzah. Right?
But then how we cook for because we have even Sunday.
So this year, it's Shabbat. So you cook what you need to cook on Friday. And then after Shabbat is over, then again, it's still Chag. So you cannot turn on an electricity, yeah? But if you have, let's say, a time switch that turns on the plata, you could put on it some raw food if you needed to, or time switch turned on the oven, you could put something on it. But yes, you will have to do a lot of cooking in advance to have everything you need, because it's quite difficult to cook on Chag. Some people, they'll take a candle from the candle and light the gas stove, but it's a bit risky that. So I think the best thing is to have food ready before Shabbat, so you can just reheat it on the Shabbat. On Shabbat is more common, but on the Chag you can put it on the hot plate. You can have the hot plate on the switch, on the timer, so it's not on the whole time. And with that, you should manage. So on Chag, the difference between Shabbat and Chag is that on Shabbat, something that's raw, or even not completely cooked, you're not allowed to put it on the plata. And even if you put on the plata something cooked, there's lots of laws about it. If it's liquid, it's a problem. On Chag, you don't have these problems because you're allowed to cook on Chag. You're just not allowed to turn on the electric item, okay? But yeah, you're gonna have a late Seder this time because first you have to wait for Shabbat to end. So you always have to wait for dark anyways, but on a normal year, at least you get to prepare a bit before. Yeah. But the second night, every year, you have to wait for the first day until Chag to end before you can do any preparations for the second night. Okay? Any other? I saw another hand up, so somebody want to ask something else?
No, it's fine. You actually answered my question by answering Paula's question.
Okay.
It's perfect. Thank you.
Amazing. Okay, good. And then maybe one thing is worth knowing that, of course, in the kiddush that you do on the Chag, it's going to be at the same time Havdalah. Yeah. So we do. If you follow well your Haggadah, you will see that the kiddush contains in it the kiddush. It also contains the Boreh Meoreh Ha'esh. So when you say Boreh Meoreh Ha'esh, you just put your hands to the candle, towards the candles, which are the candles of the Chag, which you lit after Shabbat went out. And then you have the bracha, the hamavdil ben kodesh lekodesh, separate between holy and holy. Because Shabbat is the holiest, Chag is a little bit less holy. So that's all, but it's all going to be in the kiddush, which is going to be at the same time in Havdalah. And the same time, the first of the 4 cups of the Seder. Okay, are we happy?
No, this last part.
Please.
That one again. So because the here is to light the candles in, for example, in Malmo on Motzei Shabbat is at 20 at 9. Yeah. So first Abdallah and then this.
No. After the Chag is over at 9 o'clock or whatever, so then you should say Baruch Hamavdil ben Kodesh leKodesh. Yeah, that means on a normal Saturday night, if you need to work, you say Baruch Hamavdil ben Kodesh lechol. Unless there's one who separates between holiness and unholy, and then you can do the work you need to do. Or you can pray Ma'arid. If you pray Ma'arid, that also shows that the day is over. But now you're not going to Chol, you're not going to weekday, you're going from Shabbat to a Chag, which is lesser holiness. So you say Baruch Hamavdil ben Kodesh leKodesh. That's the one to separate holy and holy. And then you can do everything that's forbidden on Shabbat but permitted on Chag. And one practical thing is, like you said, now you're allowed to light candles. How do you light? You have the fire that's been burning since yesterday. You put your match in it. You take the fire, make the bracha, you light the candles and then be careful. Don't put out the match. You're not allowed to put out the match on time. Just leave it on the side and let it in a safe place and let it burn by itself. Then you have the candles. Then the husband, the father, whoever, or the woman, if there is no husband or father, starts the kiddush. And inside that kiddush is also a havdalah. And in that, I'm doing that. When you say doing that kiddush, boreh meoreh ha'esh, you put your hands towards the candles that you lit earlier, just before. Okay? Thank you for today. Looks like people are happy. So I wish you all a Pesach kasher v'sameach, and I hope everything will go well. It will continue. Not sure who is teaching you next week, but it will go Bezrat Hashem through the Seder and everything that's included in that. Okay? It was a pleasure teaching you. All the best.